Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 31 of the 2023 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And look, we're just a little over a week away from the NFL draft, and I still feel like there's a lot of uncertainty there in round number one. What's going to happen beyond really Bryce Young there at number one overall? Is Will Anderson an option there for Houston? Are they going to take CJ Stroud? Are there smoke screens about potentially Will Levis coming up to Houston? Is CJ Stroud going to fall? What's happening with Anthony Richardson? Where will Jalen Carter go? A lot of uncertainty heading into the draft. I think that's part of what makes the draft process so much fun, is really taking a look at each of the teams. Where's the best fit going to be? Who's going to be the best fit for this franchise? And then where do we see them coming off the board? And so that's really what I've been trying to do when I'm putting my mock draft together. And look, I'm going to be putting out my final mock draft on the website, and we're going to be talking through that next week as we lead up to the draft itself. We're looking at our positional rankings. We've made it through all of the offensive positions. We've talked through the entire defensive line, both edge rushers and defensive tackles. Now we're going to get into the linebacker position. And the linebackers, I think this is a spot where we've talked about running backs being devalued, and I think as a result, the linebacker position has also been devalued a bit. So we're going to take a look at this draft class. 18 to 20 linebackers, being drafted, potentially more on the list. It's really going to be interesting to see exactly how that plays out. But again, if you've listened to any of the positional rankings, I tend to want to take a look at what's happened in the past in order to kind of get an idea of where we're going future-wise. So really what we've been doing is going back and taking a look at the last 5 drafts, and really taking a look at where everyone's come off the board, just how many position players, and kind of getting a good gauge from there. So when we look at the linebacker position, and look, I use drafthistory.com to really take a look at each of the positions. They've got a lot of linebackers in here, but they also have some what we consider edge rushers. So when we look at the totals, it's kind of hard to really kind of do a comparison, because it's kind of some edge rushers plus linebackers as well. But when we look at 2018, we had a total of 37 linebackers that were taken in the draft. So when you look at that draft class, that's the Roquan Smith coming number 8 overall, Tremaine Edmonds, Leighton Vander Esch, Rashaan Evans, all coming off the board in round 1, all guys that have made an impact at the next level. We also know with Shaq Leonard, the 36th overall pick there for the Colts, what he's meant. Uchenna Nwosu with the Chargers, and now with Seattle at number 48 overall. Fred Warner falls all the way to round number 3 to the 49ers, and we know what he's meant to that program. How about Jerome Baker? He's been a mainstay as a starter there, also a round 3 pick. Josie Jewell getting a lot of playing time, starting experience with the Broncos. He came off the board in round number 4. Marquise Haynes, really more of an edge rusher there for the Panthers, but he was a 4th round pick, a guy that can still get after the quarterback a bit. I know Jannard Avery he was a 5th round pick coming out of Memphis. He's a guy that's kind of played some a lot of different positions there and gotten some playing time. But how about Zaire Franklin, number 235 overall, out of Syracuse? We see what he's meant to that Colts team. And so that's the thing, and I've been saying this time and time again, you can find value in all 3 days of the draft, and I think this is the latest example of that. We're going to see that again in 2019. A total of 36 linebackers taken. You look at Devin White, Josh Allen, who's really an edge rush. We kind of counted him, and Brian Burns also taken in round number 1. Counted those in our edge rush counts, but this, because we talked about both the edge rushers from a defensive end and a linebacker standpoint. So again, we're talking linebackers and edge rush with these groups. Devin Bush, number 10 overall. Jelani Tavai, bit of a surprise there, coming off the board at number 43 to the Lions. Jermaine Pratt, what he's meant to the Bengals, 3rd round pick there. Chase Winovich, we know has been some nice edge rush depth. He was a 3rd round pick. Sione Takitaki was re-signed by the Browns. We know what he's meant to that organization. Cody Barton was a starter there in Seattle. He's moved on to Washington. He's going to be a starter there as well. Bobby Okereke, he moved on to the Giants, but he meant a lot to the Colts as a starter there as well. Continuing down the board, Drew Tranquill. He got a nice free agent contract. He was a 4th-round pick. Drake Greenlaw, again, finding talent later on in the draft. 5th-round pick out of Arkansas, number 148 overall, and he's been a starter there for the 49ers. Andrew Van Ginkel, Mac Wilson, Justin Hollins, Blake Cashman, all role players there. How about Cole Holcomb? 173 overall out of North Carolina, going to the Redskins. And Cole Holcomb, look, he's with the Steelers now, but a guy that really inserted himself into the starting rotation there. And then David Long, similarly in round number 6, coming out of West Virginia, kind of an undersized linebacker, didn't really get a whole lot of expectations surrounding him, and we know what he's been able to make the most of it. Caden Ellis, a 7th-round pick out of the Saints. We know that he's now with the Falcons, another guy who has really maximized his time there in the league. 2020, total of 32 linebacker slash edge rush from the linebacker position. We saw a total of 4, and you're talking about Isaiah Simmons, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Queen, all starters in the league. You look at Willie Gay in round number 2. How about Logan Wilson falling all the way to round number 3? This was a guy that, coming out of Wyoming, I was a huge fan of, a guy that was just a playmaker. And we've seen that for Cincinnati in his first couple of years in the league. Zach Bond going to the Saints. He was kind of an edge rush type there at the linebacker spot. Jacob Phillips has been a starter there for the Browns, also coming off the board in round number 3. Akeem Davis-Gaither has been a role player there for the Bengals, coming off the board in round number 4. How about Michael Walker out of Fresno State, right? This is the guy off the board in round 4. He's been a guy that's been able to start there in Atlanta. Trevis Gibson to the Bears. Kind of surprised that they had him listed as a linebacker. He's really a defensive end there for Chicago. As we continue to make our way down that group, Marcus Bailey to the Bengals, another guy that could be considered a role player there at that linebacker spot. So 2020, total of 32 between those two groups. 2021, 27 total. This is the Micah Parsons draft. And we know what Micah Parsons has meant to the Cowboys. Is there a guy in this year's draft that can resemble Micah Parsons? We've talked about him in the edge rush group, and that might be Nolan Smith. But Zaven Collins at number 16, Jamin Davis at 19, and Odafe Owe at number 31. All guys that are still developing, but I think that the athleticism and the traits were absolutely there. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah coming off the board in round 2. Nick Bolton, man, what he meant to the Chiefs. The scoop and score in the Super Bowl, almost had a second one. Pete Werner it has been a valued starter there for the Saints, another second-round pick. Monty Rice is getting a chance to start with the Titans. He's was taken in round 3. Baron Browning, also a starter for the Broncos. Derek Barnes to the Lions, round number 4. This is a guy that has pushed for some playing time there as well, has some starting experience under his belt. So he's a guy that I think is continuing to progress. And then this past season, 2022, 33 linebackers slash, the edge rush that we were talking about. I think a bit of a surprise, the Packers taking Quay Walker. Everyone was really expecting him to be a second rounder. He came off the board number 22 overall. I actually had Devin Lloyd ranked a lot higher, but he falls to 27. Jaguars pick him up there. We've got Ebiketie, Boye Mafe, David Ojabo listed among these linebackers. They're all edge rushers. We talked about them previously. You get to Troy Anderson out of Montana State going to the Falcons at number 58 overall. We know the athleticism. It's shown brightly there in the NFL. And I think Ryan Nielsen's really going to be happy to be working with Anderson, really a versatile chess piece in his multiple defense. Brian Asamoah brings some speed there to the Vikings. Round 3. Same thing with Chad Muma. We know that he's gotten some playing time there for the Jags. Christian Harris is going to be a very valuable piece there for the Texans with D'Amico Ryans and that linebacking group. How about Nakobe Dean to the Eagles in round 3? He and Jordan Davis going to Howie Roseman's group there out of Georgia. He's now the starting middle linebacker with TJ Edwards moving on to Chicago. Leo Chenal for the Chiefs, showing off some pretty good athleticism. He's gotten himself some playing time. Same thing with Micah McFadden out of Indiana. I think people were sleeping on him. People had him rated really low, and ends up being picked up in round number 5, 146 overall. And I thought that he's played pretty well. Then there's Rodrigo. If you watched Hard Knocks, Malcolm Rodriguez, this dude, he's undersized. That's why he fell all the way to round number 6, number 188 overall, out of Oklahoma State. And dude played his way into a starting spot there with the Lions. Same thing, I know he's an edge rush guy, and we talked about him in the edge position group. But James Houston IV was a 6th-round pick out of Jackson State, number 217 overall. So undersized guys that are making an impact there for Detroit. So that's an organization that I think is really on the rise, and a lot of that is due to the type of guys that they are bringing in, and making some really smart decisions there in the draft. So what I'd like to do, I look at the draft and really this linebacker group, want to kind of talk through where I see some of these guys coming off the board. Who's going to be the first linebacker taken, and really kind of talk about our day 2 guys and then day 3. Because I think we have one linebacker who may come off the board in round 1, and then after that, it's really where is everyone else going to fall. I think what you're really going to see is a lot of depth there in rounds 4, 5, 6, and really 7 as well. There are a lot of names. There aren't going to be a ton of draft picks to go around. So I think there are going to be some guys, some decent players that we're going to see fall to, being undrafted free agents out of this position group. So we'll go ahead and jump into things. We look at Drew Sanders out of Arkansas, 6'4", 235 pounds. This was a guy who started his career there at Alabama, really trying to be an edge rush opposite Will Anderson. And when he moves to Arkansas, he's really more of an off-ball linebacker. And in Fayetteville, look, he was a versatile chess piece playing next to Bumper Pool. Finished with 103 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, an interception, 3 forced fumbles, sideline-to-sideline range, scrapes over the top, shoots gaps downhill in a hurry, speed, quick hands to be an effective pass rusher coming off the edge. I mean, obviously 9.5 sacks. He knows exactly what to do to get there. Wears a lot of hats. I look at Buffalo, and I know Buffalo is considering a wide receiver there. There's also talk that maybe Nuke Hopkins may end up wanting to get traded to Buffalo. So there could be a receiver in their future, possibly a running back, depending on what happens with Bijan Robinson. But I look at Drew Sanders. I think he'd be a great fit next to Matt Milano. He has a lot of the same traits that Tremaine Edmonds has, and we know that Edmonds has moved on to Chicago. I think Drew Sanders will basically be a plug-and-play guy there. I know he's still learning the position. That's why he may fall to round number 2, but I still think the Bills make the most sense. So whether it's round 1 or round 2, I really feel that Drew Sanders, the best fit for him is going to be in Buffalo. My number 2 linebacker is going to be Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. The versatility is off the charts for him. 6'2", 235 pounds. This is a guy who, I think versatility is another thing we talk about. I think he draws comparisons to Isaiah Simmons. I don't know that those are necessarily fair because, when you look at Isaiah Simmons, he was a top 10 pick, and really because, you look at the size, the athleticism, the explosiveness to his game. And look, Trenton Simpson at 6'2", and 235, he's no slouch. Ran a 4.4 340, 1.55, 10-yard split. When you look at his game, though, I think he was at his best when Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator there at Clemson, allowing him to really just play freely in space, be that playmaker that he is, be able to drop into coverage, be able to get after the quarterback, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. When you look at 2021, he had 65 tackles, 12.5 going for loss, 6.5 sacks, a couple of pass breakups. He was all over the field. Fast forward to 2022, Brent Venables is now the head coach at OU, and 72 tackles, so an uptick there, but just 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Really not playing the same position, and I thought there was a little bit more rigidity to the defense there with what he was asked to do. Give him some of that flexibility, allow him to roam around and make plays in space, and I look at him. I look at Carolina. And I know that people have talked about Pittsburgh, potentially Buffalo as well if they don't get Drew Sanders. But the reason why I'm looking at Carolina, I know Frankie Louvu had a career season in his first year there with the Panthers. But when I look at it, I think they have to start considering life after Shaq Thompson. I know Jeremy Chin is seen as a potential successor. Really, Chin should be in that secondary. You draft Simpson, allow him to stay there, and gives you multiple chess pieces to really move around, give you some of that versatility. So at 39 overall, I think that could make some sense there for Trenton Simpson when it's all said and done. Number 3 on my list is going to end up being Jack Campbell, and this dude is just an absolute football player. 6'5", 249 pounds. When you look at what this guy is able to do, model of consistency for the vaunted Hawkeye defense over the last 2 seasons. 265 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, a couple of sacks, 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. Everyone talks about this is a guy that goes downhill, but can he really play in space? Can he really move laterally? Can he really get into coverage? When you watch this guy in zone, does a great job locking in on the quarterback, reads and reacts, trusts what his eyes see, and he makes a break on the football and makes plays in coverage. He just has that nose for the football, and he uses those instincts to put himself in a position to make a play. If you want to know where the ball's heading, just watch number 31 in black and white work. At his best in the box, again, he can fill holes downhill, can scrape over the top and meet the ball carrier on the perimeter. Ran a 4.65 40 at the combine, so I think he answered the questions about his athleticism. 37-inch vertical leap, 6.74 3-cone drill. That put him second among wide receivers, and his 4.24 short shuttle put him in the top 5 among wide receivers as well. So when you talk about his athleticism, I think he's really kind of put that to bed. And when I look at Tampa at number 50 overall, I know that they were able to bring Lavonte David back. It's just a 1-year deal. They're also talking about Devin White potentially wanting a trade and getting out of Tampa. They're going to need to address that linebacker position. I think Jack Campbell would fit nicely into what Tampa wants to do defensively. One more guy on the list, and I actually have him coming off the board before Jack Campbell, and that's Daiyan Henley out of Washington State. I have him going to the New York Jets. 6'1", 225. He started off as a safety, moved to linebacker there at Nevada, moved to Wazoo, and in that final season, this is a guy that has tremendous range, tremendous instincts. He can play all the way to the sideline. Good job working in traffic, reading the offensive line, slipping, sliding to avoid blocks and make a play. 4.5 speed, fluid hips allow him to match up against both tight ends and running backs. I think that's really, when you look at all the guys here at the top, new wave linebackers, guys that are able to do a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats. Daiyan Henley is really no exception. 106 tackles for the Cougs, 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He had 4 interceptions in 2021 with the Wolfpack before transferring as a grad transfer. But I don't see him getting out of the second round. He's a guy, to me, that can be a playmaker. The Jets have 2 picks in round number 2. I think one of them use it on Daiyan Henley. When I look at this, I think he just brings some of that versatility. I know that they did sign a 3-year deal on Quincy Williams, but you add another athletic linebacker with cover skills, Henley's going to be that guy. Round number 3, this is where it can get a little interesting. I'm looking at DeMarvion Overshown of Texas, 6'3", 229 pounds, ran a 4.56 40 at the combine with a 1.59 10-yard split, which isn't too shabby at all. But you look at this guy, he looks like he could be a safety, but he's just kind of a jacked up safety, right? He's got a lot of range, can play sideline to sideline, is a force coming downhill, but he can also make plays in space. And that's something that you're going to see there. I have him going to Houston at number 73 overall. They signed Denzel Perryman. They've signed Corey Littleton in free agency. I think Overshown can end up being the future of the linebacker position there in Houston. D'Amico Ryans is going to be looking for a guy to really take that group over. I think Overshown has shown the ability to be able to do that. 96 tackles this past season, 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 5 pass breakups. When you look at the stats, in his career, 30.5 tackles for loss. So a guy that loves to play behind the line of scrimmage. He's got a little bit of juice to be a pass rusher. 9 sacks, 17 pass breakups to go along with 3 interceptions. Just a guy who is just a good football player, tremendous athlete, ton of length. And so that's where I get really excited when I watch this guy play because I just think about the versatility. A guy that could probably even drop back and play a little bit of safety if you really wanted him to as well. The next guy on my list is someone who I think could end up being a third rounder. He'll probably come off the board in round number 4, and that's Dorian Williams out of Tulane. This is a guy, he brings a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, 6'1", 220 pounds. Look, 132 tackles this past season, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, a couple of interceptions, 7 pass breakups, and then he shows up at the combine and really shows off some really nice athleticism as well. Almost has 34-inch arms. When you look at this draft class, there's only a couple of guys that really compare to that. But ran a 4.49 40, 1.54 10-yard split. Look, he made plays he was the heart and soul of that defense. He was flying around, making plays on the football. He's athletic to drop in coverage, trust his eyes. What I really love is, being able to spy the quarterback as well, be able to come downhill and make a play. Standout special teams performer for the Green Waves, excellent closing burst. He can carry the tight end down the field, on wheel, cover running backs on wheels. I think he's best in the flat. He can be a little stiff in transition at times, but the burst downhill, blitzing through the A gap, will struggle at times to get off blocks, especially with offensive linemen climbing to the second level. But you love the depth and coverage. You see the back pedal, covering these dig routes, reading the quarterbacks, getting his hand in to break up. Defensive leader, calls all the plays on defense. Team captain, a guy that I think could be a really nice locker room presence for teams. And so he's a guy that I think, because the position is devalued, he may fall to round 4. But if I were a team, I'd take him in round number 3. I think after that, you look at a guy like Henry To'oto'o out of Alabama, 6'1", 227 pounds, ran a 4.62 40, which isn't bad. And when you think about To'oto'o, this is a guy that, number 10 for Alabama, and I think he does a lot of things. He's a smart player. He's an intelligent player. But the thing with Henry To'oto'o is he's not going to be. I don't think he'll ever be an exceptional player. He puts himself to be in the right position at the right time. I think he's an intelligent player. He'll probably be a starter, but he won't be that dynamic playmaker that teams are looking for, and that's fine. He's going to fill a really nice role. That's why I don't have him coming off the board in the first 2 days of the draft. Initially, I did, but the more I sit there and look at Henry To'oto'o's tape, I think 4th round feels about right. 205 tackles in his 2 years there at Alabama. 15.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. Started his career at Tennessee, but really, what he was able to do there at Alabama really, put everyone kind of on notice, about his game. The next guy we got to talk about, though, is Noah Sewell out of Oregon. 6'1.5", 246 pounds. Ran a 6'4" 40 at the combine. I think everyone was expecting him maybe to run even a little bit faster than that, because he's really his downhill speed definitely jumps off the charts. Put up 225 27 times, so strength has never been an issue. This is a guy that can really, he stacks and sheds, takes on blockers, doesn't stay blocked, continues to work towards the football. I think he's limited in coverage. Really, 2021 was a standout year. 114 tackles, 8.5 for loss, 4 sacks. I think he struggled at the beginning of the year trying to figure out Dan Lanning's defense. Once he was able to just kind of relax and fly around to the football, make plays, I think you really saw Noah Sewell, his game start to open up and really started playing a lot better. Can get up the field as a pass rusher. You see some of the transition, the ability to put his foot in the ground and make those change of direction to get after the quarterback. Good bull rush. I watched him against Oregon State, and Joshua Gray, left tackle. He's a solid player. Was able to drive him back into the quarterback. Sets a pretty hard edge against the run. They're trying to bounce it outside. Does a really good job kind of spilling that out to the secondary there on the outside. Good diagnosis, coming downhill. Runs right by some of the blockers, able to drop some guys in the backfield. So the quick to read and react. You just worry about the lateral agility, his ability to play in coverage with consistency. 4th round feels about right. I think at one point everyone was talking about him as a first rounder, but I still think this is a solid performer, a guy that's going to be a starter at the next level. He's just, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be completely flashy, but he's physical, and a guy that's going to, he's when he arrives at the football, he's going to make it known that his presence is felt. Panay Sewell's brother, and two guys that definitely it's a football family for sure. Owen Papo out of Auburn, 6 foot 225, ran a 4.39 40 at the combine. I mean, that really speaks to what this guy does. He flies around and makes plays. You're going to see him attack the football. Is a big hitter. I think that's another thing that really jumps off. He wants to be physical, looking to shoot gaps. Doesn't stay blocked. There was a game against LSU, and the guard and center climbed to the second level, started to push him back. He didn't stay blocked, used his hands to get off that block and get towards the ball carrier. It's one of those things that I think he does a pretty good job in space, understanding how to position his body to slip blocks and make some plays. Struggled with some injuries this past season, but I don't think that there's really too much concern about his durability overall. He's a guy that I think things need to stay clean in front of him, but you allow him to fly around and make a play on the ball. 91 tackles this past season, 3 tackles for loss, a couple of sacks. Only played in 5 games in 2021, but this is a guy, look, he's going to shoot some gaps. He's going to play sideline to sideline, can offer up a little bit of pass rush ability as well. I like Owen Papo coming off the board there in round number 4. Which takes us to a guy that I would pound the table for, who could come off the board in round 3. I'd love to see him come off the board in round 3. I ultimately think the 4th, 5th round range probably feels about right, and that's Yasir Abdullah out of Louisville. 6'1", 237, ran a 4.47 40 at the combine, 36.5 vertical leap. So when you talk about Abdullah, the athletic profile, screams that this is a dude that can make some plays, right? The athleticism, you expect him to be productive, a guy that can rush off the edge, beats the tackles inside with inside moves, gets to the quarterback in a hurry. The jump, the speed, the effort coming off the edge to get to the quarterback as a pass rusher is definitely there. Team captain, one of the things, I saw him play against Florida State and read the screen, gets outside in a hurry, runs down the running back for a 2-yard loss. So a guy that is pretty good in coverage. He was good underneath in zone coverage, read Jordan Travis's eyes, ultimately tried to hit the wide receiver to the wide side, and ball ultimately was way underthrown, and Yasir Abdullah was in the right place to make a play and wound up being able to pick the football off. When you look at what Yasir has been able to do at Louisville, the numbers, I didn't put him among, I considered it among the edge rushers, but ultimately I have him at linebacker because, frankly, at 6'1", 237, he's a little undersized at the edge. I can see him being a Sam in a 43 defense and then just let him go work, right? 42 tackles for loss, but 23.5 sacks. When you look at that, 19.5 sacks in his last 2 seasons. 10 sacks in 2021, 9.5 in 2022. Also has 8 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, had 2 this past season, 4 forced fumbles this past season, 8 in his career. So I look at Yasir Abdullah. I think he's a guy that has the productivity to have a much higher draft position than I think he'll probably get. Although, to me, he looks like a 3rd-round pick. To me, he looks like a guy, if a team like the Raiders, and you look at them, I know they've got Divine Diablo there, as one of their linebackers. They moved on from Corey Littleton. But, you think about their pass rush. If you want to have a Sam backer that can help Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, and company coming off the edge, then I think Yasir Abdullah can absolutely be able to be that guy. And I think the Raiders should look to target Abdullah in that 3rd, 4th round range. Ultimately, I think he may end up being a 5th-round pick, though. Cam Jones out of Indiana, 6'1", 226 pounds. Veteran presence there for the Hoosiers. Really was the heart and soul of that defense. He battled some injuries during his time there, and he made his presence felt when he was out on the field. Played in just 5 games this past season, but in those 5 games, 54 tackles, 3 going for loss, and a sack. I think when he's at his best, this is a guy that can end up coming off the board in round number 5. Ultimately, I think the injury history may be enough for him to fall because there are so many linebackers that we could be considering in the 5th, 7th round range. To me, I think he'll probably be a 6th, possibly a 7th round pick, but definitely a guy that is going to warrant some consideration here in this group. Ivan Pace Jr., Cincinnati. This is a dude that just flies around to the football. He's undersized. He's 5'10 and a half, 231 pounds. But you want to talk about a guy that just makes plays. And this was a guy that he transferred to Cincinnati to play with his brother Deshaun, but he started out at Miami of Ohio, and in 2021 had 125 tackles, 13 going for loss, 4 sacks, 3 pass breakups as well, and then he transfers to the Bearcats and just really elevates his game even further with 136 tackles, 20 and a half going for loss, 9 sacks, 4 pass breakups, and he's playing in the American Athletic Conference as opposed to the MAC. So this is a dude that's just a heat-seeking missile. He's looking to come downhill and just really come with bad intentions. He's looking to ruin your day, and I think that's really what made number 0 a lot of fun. 22 AAC Defensive Player of the Year. He was 2nd in the FBS in tackles for loss, unanimous All-American. And the lateral agility can scrape over the top against the run as well. So he's not just a guy that's going to come downhill, and want to just fill gaps all the time. But you see that tremendous range. He took on, playing against Arkansas, took on Ricky Stromberg, who I think is going to be a 3rd or 4th round pick at the center position. Able to use a swim move to beat him and get to the running back for dropping him for a loss. But you love the athleticism, the physicality. He may be undersized, but this is a dude that's going to fly around to the football. And 5th, 6th round feels about right. But this is a guy that's going to make a team, and he's going to be a fan favorite for sure because of the way the effort that he plays with. Jeremy Banks out of Tennessee, 6'1", 232 pounds, 4'5", 340 at the combine, 37.5-inch vertical leap. I don't think there was any question that this guy, from an athletic standpoint, that he could play. He's a guy, though, that I think is more of a downhill performer. This is a dude that wants to blitz, come downhill, shoot gaps, times those blitzes really well. I think he had a great game against Bama in the upset of the Crimson Tide. Really pursues the run laterally well in a hurry. Got to Jahmyr Gibbs on the outside. Only limited him to just a 4-yard gain. Outflanked the offense, looping around. Timed his blitz off the edge well to affect the pass, getting to Bryce Young. Was sitting at 5 yards. Starts to head towards the line of scrimmage at the snap. Then the speed through the A gap hits Young in the end zone as he was throwing on a 3rd and 22 play that forced a punt. Beats the block of the center on a counter play to the outside, wraps up Gibbs for little gain there. They played Pittsburgh, and I think one of the more impressive plays was a touchdown run by Izzy Abanikanda, and he nearly chased him down on this 76-yard touchdown run. The effort was impressive. Active hands to get the ball and his hands into the passing lane. Drops into coverage, taking on the running backs. I think he's a little limited there. Struggles with that on a consistent basis. Was beaten deep playing Georgia in 2021. Brock Bowers beat him by a couple of yards, but I think my notes just really say this dude is a blitzer. You line him up there at linebacker, you allow him to shoot through the A gap, you let him to come off the edge, and the speed coming downhill is absolutely evident, and a guy that just knows how to time up those jumps really well. 2021 was his best year by far. 128 tackles, 11.5 going for loss, 5.5 sacks this past season. Just 53 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, but a guy, because of his effort, because of the athleticism as well at the position, he's a guy that I think could come off the board in round number 6, possibly round 7. Just not a guy that is adept in coverage as some of these other guys. And I think that's why his draft stock falls a little bit. Two guys that I'm really high on that I think other people aren't nearly as high on. And the first guy is Servassier Dennis, coming out of Pittsburgh, 6 foot, 226 pounds. And this guy, to me, was an absolute playmaker there for Pittsburgh. He just seemed to be all over the field. And, he can blitz. He can drop into coverage. He can play the run. 94 tackles this past season, 12 tackles for loss. That's his third straight season with at least 10 tackles for loss. 7 sacks. So ultimately, that's 15 in 3 years with the Panthers. 3 pass breakups, a couple of interceptions in his career as well. But for me, when I watch SirVocea Dennis play, the question I think really is going to be, can he be an inside backer? I'd actually like to see him play in a 4-3 as a will, and I think that he'd have some success there playing that position. But look, Dennis. He's a guy that really times up his blitz as well. He's going to be physical at that point of attack, taking on blockers. You see some lateral agility to his game, but man, when he comes downhill, taking on a running back in the hole, he's going to definitely wrap the guys up and make a play. Just an absolute nose for the football, very active, high motor guy. Man, you see him looping around on stunts, getting to the quarterback. Blitzing through A gaps, shooting gaps whenever possible. There's an ability to make plays. And that's really the biggest thing that I see with SirVocea Dennis. Big number 7. He was a team captain, a guy that made all the defensive calls there for Pittsburgh. And I think 6th round probably feels about right. Because he is on the smaller side there at that linebacker spot. But I think a team could really find a good use in a 43, using him really as that will. Same goes for D. Winters out of TCU, 5'11", 227, so another guy who's undersized. Ran a 4.49 40 at the combine, so that downhill speed is there. And if you watched the CFP, the playoffs, when they took on Michigan, this is a guy that was a game wrecker. Right, coming downhill off the edge. He did lose contain against Stetson Bennett in the national title game. I think he got baited a little bit coming off the edge. But the dude will get downhill. He's a very sure tackler. That's something that I think absolutely jumped off the film. If you watched him dropping into coverage, he read J.J. McCarthy in that Fiesta Bowl. The tight end, Colston Loveland, on a slant, read it, drifts into the throwing lane, picked off the pass, secured it, returned it 29 yards for a pick 6. You saw a delayed blitz, shooting through the A-gap, chasing McCarthy, trying to escape the pocket, wrapped him up as he was trying to throw it. Ball was ultimately incomplete. Crashes down backside at the mesh when Donovan Edwards took the handoff, able to chase him down for a 3-yard loss. They're shooting into the backfield, filling gaps, able to cover both the running back and the tight end. He was really just flying all over the place. He was anticipating run with his blitz, shoots downhill on a jet sweep to A.J. Henning, beat the block of the right guard, Zach Zinter, and shoots in for a 4-yard loss. Against Baylor, he's taking on Squirrel Williams, the running back. Swing pass, flies inside out, gets to the running back, drops him for a 4-yard loss. Really sure tackler in the open field. I look at him, and I see will potential, and the athleticism is absolutely there. I think there's no question about that. He is a little bit undersized, but he more than makes up for it with effort and just flying around with his speed. The bigger thing is he's got these shorter arms, smaller hands too. They're just over 8.5 inches. So you worry about that in terms of being able to make a play on the football, but the 30, just over 31.5-inch arms. He's got that squatty build, and so you worry about his ability to take on blocks. I think that's really the biggest thing more than anything else. But I think as a 6th rounder, this is the guy that could end up being like SirVocea Dennis, guys that could make a roster and make an impact, because they did make a ton of plays for Pittsburgh and TCU respectively. Ventrell Miller of Florida is another guy, 6 foot, 232 pounds. I think he's more of an inside linebacker. But what I love about Ventrell Miller is this is another dude who plays with good effort on just about every play. And when 51 wasn't in the lineup for Florida, they absolutely felt it. You saw the speed laterally. Mookie Cooper, a fast receiver there at Mizzou, able to chase him down, drop him in the open field for only a 2-yard gain. He's very active, has a nose for the football, times his jumps pretty well on his blitzes. Also shows the timing and the presence of mind on some of his delayed blitzes to really get there. reads screens. So he does a good job, with the studying, reading his keys, instinctive, explosive. Got to a play and made a play on the ball carrier off of a screen. That was against Kentucky. He only played in 2 games in 2021, so I think some of the durability concerns are going to be there. But this is a guy, he led the team in tackles in 2020, and that's really the thing. When he's healthy, this is a guy who plays fast. 86 tackles, 7.5 for loss, 3.5 sacks in 2020. Obviously, we know that there was a regime change in 2022. Still ended up with 74 total tackles, 8.5 going for loss. So definitely an instinctive guy, especially against the run. There are some questions about his ability dropping into coverage. He can read the plays really well, a lot of what's happening in front of him. I just don't know if he's going to be able to pick up running backs, cover them out of the backfield. So that limits his draft potential. Is he really a three down linebacker, or do we have to take him off the field on 3rd downs? Similarly with Aubrey Miller out of Jackson State, 5'11", 229, ran a 4.71 40 at the combine. In his 2 seasons there, he was at Missouri from 2017 to 2019, played in 21 games, ultimately moves to Jackson State, and in his 2 seasons there, 226 tackles, 23.5 going for loss, 8.5 sacks, 9 pass breakups, 6 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. This is a guy that showed pretty good range, and was a physical presence there at Jackson State. One of the leader defensively for Deion Sanders and company. And you look at him, and obviously at 5'11.5", he's another undersized linebacker. So probably going to fall towards the end of day number 3. I would have loved to have seen what he could do against some of these other guys. When you watch him in the drills right next to somebody else at the combine, being able to check off some of the boxes there. But even still, I think he's a good athlete, a guy that you're going to find around the football, and just really an intelligent player. And so I think he's a guy that can end up sticking at the next level. You just wonder if he's going to be able to cover at that NFL level. Anthony Orji out of Vanderbilt, 6'1", 230 pounds, 4'5", 340, 38.5-inch vertical leap. So we could definitely check off the athleticism. I think there's no question that Anthony Orji has that. Very active, leading tackler for the group, pretty fluid, dropping into coverage, able to turn his hips from outside to the inside, shoots gaps downhill, will force running backs wide, and really getting them, kind of stringing them out and allowing the other defenders to come out and rally to the football. This is a guy that is pretty instinctive in terms of the run, being able to put his helmet on the football and make a play, force some fumbles. He can drop into coverage, quick throws over the middle. He'll, taking a couple of steps back, sees the throw over the middle, will immediately plant, explode downhill with a big hit on the receiver, and no real wasted movement coming downhill. Doesn't always maintain gap integrity, so obviously that's an issue. But you love some of the timing on some of his blitzes, being able to shoot gaps and get downhill. Orji, when you look stat-wise, 106 tackles in 2022, 6.5 going for loss with a sack. But I mentioned that in 2021, he was also the team's leading tackler, 92 tackles, 13 going for loss there as well. A guy that makes a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. Again, coming downhill is the biggest thing. 21 tackles for loss, 269 tackles in his career there with the Commodores. Most of that really in the last 2 seasons, really 198 of those. But a guy that I think I like the athleticism. I think of Zaire Franklin and what he's meant to the Colts. I look at Anthony Orji, and he can end up being a similar type of player, similar type of impact. Drake Thomas, NC State, is an intriguing guy. 6 foot, 228 pounds, ran a 4.7 40 at the combine. There was a 7-1 3-cone drill that I think is that would have placed him, I think, 4th among the linebackers. He was 1/100th of a second away from having the same time there as Charlie Thomas. So it would have been 4th. overall in the group. But this is a guy that's known for getting after the quarterback. I think length is definitely going to be a concern, and the question is okay, where are we going to play this guy? Because I think he lacks some of that ideal length coming off the edge. But, man, the dude's relentless. In his last 2 seasons there with the Wolfpack, 200 tackles, 101 in 2022. Missed that 100 tackle mark by 1 in 2021. But the plays behind the line of scrimmage, the production, that's where I get excited. 32.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. He's a guy that plays with his hair on fire and flies around to the football. I think a team may very well take a chance on him in round number 7. But again, being undersized, there are a lot of guys that are 6 foot or under, and you just worry about where they're going to be playing. Can Drake Thomas drop into coverage on a consistent basis? I think that's another question that we don't really have the answer to. Mohamed Diabate, Utah, 6'4", 227 pounds. I think when you look at him, the athleticism is absolutely there. 4'5", 240, 6'9", 6'3" cone drill, 4'2", in the short shuttle. So when you talk about the athleticism, that definitely checks out. He started his career there at Florida before transferring to Utah, and really had his best season in 2022. 58 tackles, 13.5 for loss, 5 sacks. But for me, when I thought of Utah's defense, I didn't really think of Diabate. I thought that there were a lot of other guys that made a more of an impact, and guys that you remember. I remember Clark Phillips. Do I remember number 3 for Utah making plays around the line of scrimmage? I really don't. He's one of those guys that I think because of that, I think the athleticism will give him a chance at the next level, but he just seemed to kind of blend in. He wasn't really a guy that stood out. And when you're trying to separate yourself from other guys at the next level, that's really what I worry about for him. Micah Baskerville out of LSU, 6 foot 221. I think some people actually have him rated a lot higher. This is a guy that's just a model of consistency. That's really the big thing. He's not going to be flashy, but a guy that always seemed to put himself in the right place at the right time. You watch the film, 23 is going to be right around the football. 260 tackles in his career with the Tigers, 22.5 for loss, 4 sacks, a couple of interceptions, 12 pass breakups, including 8 this past season, and just really has a good nose for the football. He's one of those guys to where there are other big names at LSU, Ojulari, Ali Gay, Jacqueline Roy, Mekhi Garner. You can go on and on with a lot of the players there defensively. Micah Baskerville didn't get the same level of respect, but he was just a heady player, and a guy that I think could also make an impact there on the special teams. I think 7th round really feels about right for him, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him come off the board much sooner, in that 4th, 5th round range, just because he's just that consistent presence that you're going to have there defensively. Some other guys who have a chance to get drafted: Jalen Graham out of Purdue, 6'2", 220, ran a 4.6, 440 at the combine. The question really for me with Jalen Graham is what position is he going to play? Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? That's really the biggest question mark for me. And he actually started his career with the Boilermakers at safety before moving to linebacker before the 2021 season. 169 tackles in his career, 12.5 for loss, 2 sacks, 3 interceptions, 13 pass breakups. He's another guy that I think just kind of blended in there. A guy that was a consistent presence there for Purdue, but he wasn't a guy that really stood out for me. And that's really where I'm struggling to really figure out where I can place Jalen Graham at the next level. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? I think because he's that tweener type, teams may struggle to really find a home, find that niche for him at the next level. Now, Shaka Hayward out of Duke, 6'3", 235, 34-inch arms that he really uses that length to his advantage. Also ran a 4.5, 340 at the combine. What I love about Shaka Hayward is the dude just has instincts for days, has a nose for the football, flies around, shoots around blocks to make tackles. He keeps that pad level low, drives through the ball carrier. Good speed, getting outside when the quarterback rolls out, can disrupt forcing quarterbacks to make poor decisions, poor throws, good timing on his blitzes, excellent range to the sideline, really good speed laterally. He's a guy that people don't really talk about a whole lot. I see him, potentially anywhere from the 5th to 7th round is kind of where Shaka Hayward is going to go. I ultimately think I'm much higher on him than a lot of other guys, and I look at it, the production is absolutely there, and the athleticism is there, the length is there. So why wouldn't this guy come off the board in that 5th, 6th round range? Is he a developmental guy? I don't think so. I think this is a guy, look, he had 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. I've seen him drop into coverage, has that nose for the football. He's instinctive. 337 tackles in his career, 31.5 going for loss, 11.5 sacks. A guy that plays with excellent lateral agility. I think this is a guy, because of that added length that he has with those 34-inch arms, being able to drop into coverage, get his hand into the passing lane. I think Shaka Hayward has a chance to stick with an NFL roster. He'll be a mid to late day 3 pick, but a guy that don't be surprised if he ends up sticking on an NFL roster and potentially even getting a little bit of starting time. Isaiah Moore out of NC State. Look, NC State had really solid linebacking play. 6'2", 223. The biggest thing for me with him, he's got these shorter arms, just 31 3/4 inch arms. So, taking on blocks is going to be a struggle for him. But, I think the biggest thing, Peyton Wilson is returning to NC State because, frankly, he was hit with the injury bug. And, Drake Thomas has also battled some injuries. So has Isaiah Moore. Played in just 6 games in 2021. But I think his best season was probably 2020. 94 tackles, 11 going for loss, 3 sacks. Follows that up in 2022. Proves that he's healthy. 82 tackles, 15 going for loss, 3 sacks. A veteran presence there for that defense. I think the medicals need to check out with 2021, but he was a guy that, number one, seemed to always be around the football. And really, when Peyton Wilson went down to injury, he was a guy that stepped his play up. And that's something that I think you absolutely see. He plays well coming downhill, both as a blitzer, plays against the run, and that's really the biggest thing. You just wonder if he's just really a 2-down guy. Can he play in coverage? That's really the biggest question with Isaiah Moore. I don't know that he's able to do that, and that's really where he may not get drafted is really that struggle there. But a 3-time captain, this is a guy that's going to be a really nice presence there in the locker room. So I think he may get a chance at the next level because really a lot of the intangibles really speak volumes along with the production. And then you got Charlie Thomas out of Georgia Tech, 6'3", 216. 4'5", 240, there at the combine. This is a guy, again, he's kind of a tweener. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? But I think comparatively with, if you compare him to Jalen Graham, I thought there was more of an impact with Charlie Thomas. I saw him, flying around making some plays. Look, 112 tackles this past season, 10.5 going for loss. That's the second straight season with at least 10 tackles for loss. A couple of sacks. 4 interceptions in his career, played both defensive back and linebacker for the Yellow Jackets. And really that's the question is where is he going to play? I think special teams can end up being that spot for him. Is he a guy that's going to get drafted? That's really going to be one of the big question marks. I think he struggles to get off blocks. He takes those on and really gets engulfed at times at the point of attack. That's why I don't know that linebacker is really going to be his home at the next level. I think he's going to have to prove to be a safety. There is some stiffness to his game with some of his transitions, but I think there's a chance, especially if he can be a standout special teams performer early on, that he may end up finding his way onto a roster. I just don't know that he gets drafted when it's all said and done. So this is a linebacker group. I think you could see as many as 23, 24 linebackers drafted in this draft class. We could see as few as 20. True linebackers, not including the edge rushers, just those true linebackers. When you look at the group, first 2 days of the draft, Sanders, Simpson, Campbell, Henley, those are gimmies, right? Then you have Overshone, Dorian Williams as a potential. Those are really the guys that I see in round 3. And that possibility there. Then you get into round 4 and 5, and that's really the Noah Sewell, the Owen Papo, Henry To'oTo'o, Yasir Abdullah. I want to put him in round 3, but I think 4th and 5th round is where he comes off the board. Same thing with Ivan Pace. Love that physicality that he brings to the game. Cam Jones is going to be a 5th to 7th round, depending on the medicals, how they check out. Ventrell Miller, same thing. I think 6th round feels right for Servassier Dennis and Dean Winters. Jeremy Banks, Aubrey Miller, 6th, 7th round. Same thing with Micah Baskerville, Anthony Orji. And then Shaka Hayward, 6th, 7th round. Kind of feels about right there for him. Then you get into the conversation with Drake Thomas and Charlie Thomas, Isaiah Moore, Jalen Graham. Really, where do you see them coming off the board? Can they get themselves drafted? Ultimately, are they going to be undrafted free agents? I think there are enough storylines to be intrigued by this linebacker group. True linebackers, it's kind of a dying breed to some degree. You've already seen that with the level of play here with this group. They do a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats, being able to get after the quarterback, being able to show the range sideline to sideline, being able to cover, and not only cover just running backs or tight ends, being able to do both of those. We've seen some of these guys even line up in the slot and take on receivers a little bit. So being able to do a lot of things. If you're just a guy that's playing downhill, those 2-down thumpers, you're not going to stick in the NFL very long. Those guys are dinosaurs. You have to be able to play in space. You have to be able to play against the pass, because that's really where the game is going these days. And so that's really going to be what's interesting with this group is, how many of these athletic linebackers are going to get drafted and find a home there. How many of these guys are going to end up playing some of these hybrid roles, maybe a rover? Are they going to be true safeties? That's really where it gets kind of interesting to see really where some of these teams see these guys, envision them playing at the next level. So we'll put the linebackers to rest. We've got the defensive backs next. The corners, we know we have a really deep corner group. Just how many guys are coming off the board in round number 1. And then the safeties. Brian Branch, is he a true safety? Is he a nickel? We can have that conversation. Who's going to be the number 1 safety after Brian Branch coming off the board? Just how many safeties are we going to see come off the board on day 2 of the draft? I think there are a lot of question marks there with the group, but there are some playmakers there on the back end of the defense as well. So we'll get into that. And then next week will be all about talking through my mock, where I see some of these guys going, where I see some of the teams really concentrating a lot of their picks, and then that'll all lead up to April 27th in Kansas City. That'll be the start of the draft. Day 2, rounds 2 and 3 will be on the 28th, that Friday, and then Saturday we'll finish out the draft. Day 3, 4th round through the 7th round. Who's going to be Mr. Irrelevant? Who's going to be this year's Brock Purdy? So until next time, for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time, I am out of here.